Good. This isn't this official start. I just want to. Good. All right, Lindsay and Mohammed, you guys can drop back. Gary, is this our first slide? Or you want to do a different first slide?
Nope, this is a good one.
All
Or
right,
we can
cool.
we can we can do this one or
I
this
like
one.
that one with the gloves. Perfect.
Okay, cool.
Okay, great. Five, four, three, two. Can private practices compete with DSOs when it comes to marketing? Do DSOs have Scrooge McDuck money to spend on their SEO ads? I am here with our expert key research and sponsor, friend Gary Bird, who is out here helping educate dentists to do the three things we stand for at Dental Nachos, Gary: increase success, decrease stress, and most of all, cry less inside each day. So before I turn it over to you, could you just share with our audience, orient our audience as to what you do in your daily dentisting life to help dentists?
Absolutely. So thanks so much for having me. I love Dental Nachos. I'm very active in there, and I try to be involved in the community because you've created a great thing, and I just love interacting with
Thanks
people
so much.
there. And it's much different than a lot of other places on the internet.
Appreciate it.
So yeah, so that's important, I think, and allows us to have a lot of conversation. So what we do is we work with dentists to help level the playing field when it comes to competing, because we're not, 5-10 years ago it was a different story, but right now things are really heating up from a competition standpoint and from every single angle. So you need partners to be able to help you
Yeah.
not just generate leads, but generate opportunities that are going to turn into patients and that are going to return. And it's so nuanced. Each stage of the patient journey is so nuanced that if you do any part of it wrong, you lose all your opportunities. And then you're like, well, my marketing doesn't work. And sometimes your marketing doesn't work. Or sometimes your front desk isn't working, or sometimes your recare system isn't
Yeah.
working, or sometimes, I mean, on and on and on. You and I have had a lot of these conversations.
Sure.
So there's a lot of nuance to it. And this is something that I have a lot of experience with. This is somebody who texted me a while back, and somebody I worked with for years, and they sold to a DSO, and the DSO didn't give them exactly what they promised. I know no one's ever else has ever experienced that before, but and they're firing the marketing, and they're worried that the marketing isn't going to work now, and there's so much nuance to that, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. If you're okay, if I kind
I
of jump
love it.
into it really quickly.
I love this topic. Before I turn it over to you, dentists who are considering transitioning their practice, whether it's to a private practice group or a DSO, if you do this and they have expectations that you're going to perform after the transition, they can't remove your tools that you're used to using. Imagine asking a chef to make the same food, but say, oh, we got you cheaper knives, different ingredients, and a whole new kitchen team. So I'm excited to hear about this. I'm going to drop back, Gary, and then when
Yeah.
you're finished, we'll chat a little bit about what you talked about. Thanks so much for educating our audience.
Absolutely. And I will also say to that point, that's usually what happens with big corporations when they
Yeah.
sell to private equity, is that the food quality goes down. I remember when I was younger, I used to go to Olive Garden. And it was great. It's not so great anymore, and
Yeah.
it's more expensive now. And I could give you restaurant after restaurant after restaurant that's happened with, because private equity comes in and starts squeezing. And there's a lot of data actually on private equity not making healthcare as the whole better.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to talk about that today. Today, what I want to talk about really is just what the DSO market looks like. So this is what they're projecting. So the DSO market's going to keep growing, but when we use the word DSO, it's still a very fragmented market. It's not what we think it is, right? So when I got into dental, we talked about DSOs, and it was like DSO versus single practices. It's not really that way anymore. I more look at it as like private equity versus private money, or people who just have loans. When you have a loan with a bank, the bank doesn't tell you how to run your business. When you take private equity money, they're telling you how to run your business. So right now, there's largely about 20 DSOs with 150 more dental practices. Those are the big groups. And then the rest of them are all like small to medium DSOs that make up really the private market right now, which is very similar to the single practice. It's just a little bit more complicated. And I'm gonna break that down for our audience right now. So right now, the small DSOs make up about 37% of the market. And so these are your 4 to 19 practices. The average number of practices this group has is 8. And if you're with a single practice, you relate very closely to these folks. They don't have a lot of advantages over you. They're very, very close to the single practice. Actually, single practice has a lot more advantages over everybody in this group in different ways, which I'm going to talk about. But this is the first group. The second group is your 20 to 49 offices. Their average is about 32 practices. This is where the practices really start to change. Then from there, you have the large DSOs. This is your 50 to 150. The average number of practices this group has is 87. This makes up about 14% of the market. And then we have the jumbo DSO. So this is 150 to 299 practices. This makes up only 9% of the market. And then you have the mega DSOs. This is the big group. This is the 300 plus. These are your Heartlands, your Aspens. And this makes up about 27% of the market. Okay, so this is when you talk about group dentistry or DSOs, this is what we're talking about. Who you're really competing against and who's going to make it really, really tough for you. We got to be really, really clear. We're talking about the megas, the jumbos, maybe some of the large. It goes down into the medium a little bit, right? But the small groups are not like competing with you in the same way that the mega groups are competing with you. They don't have the same tools. So here's where I'm going to tell you what the large DSOs do really, really well. And I'm going to tell you what they suck at and where you can really compete at. Okay. So what are the large, jumbo, and mega DSOs? What are they really, really strong at? First is process and economy of scale. Okay. So let's talk about administrative process. I go to the dentist. I actually go to a Pacific Dental office. They do everything the same. They have all the same processes. They're really known for their processes and they're pretty good at them. Right. And so they can scale at a large level. So let's talk about marketing specifically. They build all of their websites exactly the same. They have different names on each of them, and they can spin up websites really, really quickly because they make them exactly the same. That's an example of having an administrative process that you can copy and paste and use over and over and over again. And they do really good at that. Okay. Another one would be recruitment. I recently did a podcast with John Murphy, who is the VP of recruitment and talent for Aspen. If you know about Aspen, they only do de novos. So really their growth is dependent on this guy right here. And he actually, in my podcast, breaks down exactly how they do recruiting. It was mind-blowing. My mind was absolutely blown. And they're really good at recruiting. Now, are they bad at other things? Of course they're not good at other things, right? They're good at recruiting. They're weak at other things. And most dentists, people listening to this, are going to be weak at recruiting and really, really good at other things. And again, don't worry. I'm just telling you what they're good at. I'm going to tell you what they're bad at in a second, okay? They're also good at compliance processes. Think like McDonald's. Why can McDonald's run and operate and use teenagers? The reason why is because their processes are really good. So these larger DSOs can often run things in certain ways because their processes are really, really good, just like McDonald's. And they're really good at this and like their compliance processes, especially, right? All their legal paperwork. I just listened to a podcast yesterday from Dental Nachos. Forget the name. I think it's a Say No to DSO or something like that. And they went over the contracts of these large DSOs. They're really solid. They're very, very good. Probably better than your contracts, right? And it's because they've invested a lot of time, money, and energy into those. And so they're really good at that. And that's something we need to be aware of. Also, new location launches. Heartland Dental. Heartland Dental spends $25,000 to $40,000 a month in marketing on new de novo launches. I want you to think about that. So you're competing against that when they come into the market. This includes direct mail, digital ads, et cetera, et cetera. It excludes signing. So I'm not talking about signage, a $5,000, $10,000 sign. I'm just talking about just marketing. And you're competing against that as they move into new markets. When after the 6 to 12 month mark, then they move into more of the recare phases. The spending does decrease, but they're typically going to still invest $25,000 plus for the first 12 months. Okay. So they're going to aggressively market when they launch a new location. The reason I know that they do this and why this is such a big deal is I have people come to me all the time. I'm launching a new practice. It's a de novo. I got $2,000, right? So you're competing. If a new Heartland practice is opening up around the same time as nearby you, you're spending 10% of what they're spending. Okay. Again, I'm telling you what they do strong, what they're good at. Okay. Insurance and supply process and negotiations. Every business owner hates this. Nobody likes this. I've never met a business owner that's like, yay, I get to negotiate with insurances or supply processes or negotiation on those kind of things. No one likes it, right? I hate that as a business owner myself. Leadership, HR, payroll process. Most people don't like that either, right? Some people say, I like leadership, but most people don't like payroll and HR and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So these are things that they're good at. The other thing they're really good at is data. So this is how they look at marketing data. So they look at how much is it to generate a lead? So this is CPL, cost per lead. How much is it to generate a lead, cost per qualified lead? So there's a difference between a lead and a qualified lead. Important that you understand that. They all then track what does it cost for an appointment, and then how much to drive that patient through the door. So that's CAC, cost to acquire a customer. Okay. So you look at this, they segment their marketing. We use Trackable for this, trackable.io. You can track all this stuff, integrates with your PMS, and you can actually see the different segments. Really, really important. We do this for every single one of our clients. But this is one way that the DSOs really compete really well, is they understand how many leads they're getting versus qualified leads. What a lot of dentists do, single practices especially, is they just go, non-qualified leads. They didn't come in, they weren't qualified. That's just not the case. It's just not. And there's a lot of nuances to this, and we'll talk more about that, okay? All right. So here's some things that we've done for practices that were not big DSOs. These are either single locations or multi-location, but not the big ones, right? There's the smaller guys. And what we've been able to do to help them around this data and this marketing, okay? So this is a dentist that single location in North Carolina, and they were able to see over 2,000% ROI. How did we do that? Just like what I was showing you in the last screen, we were able to segment their marketing. We were able to help them to compete, and we were able to give them some things that they can compete against these big DSOs in their market. Okay. And I'm going to go over what these things are in a moment. This is a group in Chicago, 4 location. They did a Novo launch. We were able to get their leads, qualified leads, down to $148 and a cost to acquire a customer down to $220. If you don't, $222 to be exact. If you don't know, if you're like, is that good? Is that bad? I don't know what that is. National average to drive a patient through the doors is around $350. Okay. Now, some people are way higher than that. Some people are way lower than that. There's a lot of nuance to it. But these are 2 examples of people that we've helped that were not big DSOs that we were able to install data into and actually help them launch new practices, or just level up the practice that they already have. Okay. So here's where the DSOs are weak. Here's where you have an opportunity to really compete. And at the end of this, I'm going to give you something for free that will really help you. Okay. So this is a speedboat. This is the cruise ship. All right. So what's the difference between these? Well, the cruise ship has a lot of nice perks. They have coffee. They have gyms. They have all kinds of fun stuff. However, they're horrible at pivoting. They're horrible. You guys all remember when this happened in Greece and this ship ended up sinking because they can't turn quickly. A speedboat can turn quickly. Everybody listening to this right now, Nachos, or almost everybody, you're a speedboat. You can make changes and adjustments to your marketing, to your processes very, very quickly, very, very easily. I've worked with a lot of big DSOs, and anytime that I need to get a process changed, no pun intended, it's like pulling teeth. It has to be, they have to everybody has to rubber stamp it. Everybody got to get a line on it. Change management in multi locations, especially when you get up into hundreds of locations, is really, really hard. Change management when you have 1 location, 2 locations, isn't as hard. It's still difficult, but it isn't nearly as hard. So most people that I'm talking to right now, you're a speedboat. You can literally compete on a dime. Cruise ships can't. They sink when they try to. Okay. So keep this in mind as we move through this. That's your competitive advantage. So let's talk about more specifically. Personal touch. You can do things in your practices that it would take forever for a large DSO to be able to implement into their practices. If patients really like something, you can write, I'll give you an example. You can write handwritten notes to all of your patients easily. There's software for it. You can do it really easy. You can use a VA. It's not that expensive. I've talked to practices on the way home, their dentists call every patient that they saw that day. Most of them don't answer. They just call as they're driving, and they just leave voicemails, just say, hey, I want to check on you. Retention rate goes through the roof on that. Hard to implement that across 100 practices. Okay. So you can do personal touch, whatever that personal touch is, you can do that. And you can do it like a speedboat. You could start it this week. owner doctors are near the process. Now, some of the bigger DSOs have figured this out that, hey, we got to get somebody who has skin in the game. We got to put them close to the patient. But a lot of DSOs don't have that. The owner isn't close to the treatment, and that creates a lot of problems. Okay. So you being the owner of the practice, you know what's going on, you care, and you're making sure that people are being taken care of. That's really, really important. Okay. That's a huge advantage. Next is a smooth patient journey. When you own a big DSO, if all of a sudden I just gave you 100 practices, you actually wouldn't know how the patient journey was at each of your offices. You would lose touch with it. When you have one or two practices and you're visiting both of them, you know if you have a smooth patient journey or not. That's a huge competitive advantage. Patients love that. Okay. Next, patient referrals. This is a big one. If you get a lot of patient referrals, that is like the gold standard of new patients. So that's a way that you can have huge competitive advantages. So here's how you can outmaneuver. I'm going to give you the black hole of marketing, okay? This is very, very simple, and I'm going to use averages. So let's say you have a $10,000 marketing budget, and I'm just using a round number, so math is easy. All right, so guess how many calls go unanswered during normal business hours? Just take a guess. If you track it, you'll know. And if you don't track it, you're going to guess way low. And if you say 0%, you are 1,000% wrong. No one is at 0%. Unanswered calls in the dental industry as a whole, this is for every single dental practice, when you average them out, is at 35% during normal business hours, not after hours. Normal business hours. What that means is that you're losing 35% of your marketing opportunities right off the top. Right off the top if you're not tracking it. This is something we track meticulously for our clients. From there, the average phone conversion for a marketing patient is 50%. So most dental practices say, no, that was a not qualified lead. Again, this is why it's so important that you track qualified leads versus unqualified leads. A qualified lead is somebody who has the money to afford the treatment that you're offering. They're nearby your practice and they're calling and asking for that service. If they're doing those three things, they're qualified. And then your team has to be equipped. Average is 50%. That means that half coin flip each time a patient calls. And that's industry average. Industry average. So what that means is you're now losing 50% of the opportunities that you do answer. So you're losing $3,500 right down the drain. So that means you have $6,500 left, and then you lose 50% of that. Here's the other thing. Most people do not have capacity right now to get patients in, but they still market for hygiene. That's a problem. So they got these hygiene patients coming in. They're putting them 2-3 weeks out. I think nation average is just over 2 weeks. That was the last number that I saw. That makes your no-show rate for the marketing new patients jump all the way to 30%. And I know what you're thinking. No, my no-show rate isn't 30%. Yeah, not for your patient referrals, but for your marketing patients, if you're putting them 2 weeks out, it's probably in that ballpark. It's close to it. So that means you end up with roughly about $2,000 of your marketing coming in from the $10,000 budget. The reason that's a problem is marketing sucks if that's what you're doing. But the reason that it happened is not because of marketing. It's because you didn't answer your phone. You only converted 50% and you have a huge no-show rate. And here's where I run into a problem. A lot of people hear me talk about this stuff and then they go, well, are you making excuses for the marketing? I'm not making excuses. It's literally impossible to be successful if you're an average dentist in the dental industry with marketing. It's impossible if you're just average. You have to be above average to be able to make your marketing work. So you have to be able to track these things. This is what we do. We track these things meticulously. I'm a psycho about it. And the reason I'm a psycho about it is I can't be successful with the average dentist unless I track these things and unless I get buy-in from them. And then we implement training on top of it. Okay, that's really, really important. You have to have accountability around the KPI, and then you have to have training. So you have to know, okay, Susan's only converting at X percentage, and then you have to train her, and then you have to hold her accountable. Training by itself without the accountability doesn't work. It doesn't work. I've tested it. Trust me, I've tested it to the moon. You train them, they get a little bit better, and then they revert right back. You have to be able to track that on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so the next thing you need to be able to do is you need to be able to historically look at where your new patients are coming from. So I have this map here, and what we have is we have all the new patients scattered there in the blue dots, and then behind it, we have income. So we can go in and look at all your historical new patients, see where they're coming from, see what income pockets they're coming from. Are they coming from high income, which is the dark areas, middle income, which is the gray areas, or low income, which is the white areas? And then we can also see where there's opportunity. So you can see here where we're not attracting patients, or where we're also, this was a 4 location, where we're cannibalizing ourselves because our offices are too close together. Really, really important, because you can actually compete against yourself if you have multi-location. So you want to be able to see exactly where your new patients are coming from, and you want to see the population as well. This is the exact same map, but just with population behind it. So you need to be able to see this, and those black dots, those are competitors, which some of them are DSOs, and they're spending 10, 20 times more than you. And so that means you have to be able to compete. And if you have the black hole of marketing, you're not going to be able to compete. All of your marketing efforts of those people that you didn't answer the phone, you didn't convert them, or they no-showed because you put them too far out, guess where they end up? They end up at your competitors. So you literally did marketing for your competitor to get a new patient. With this kind of mapping, if you close the black hole, we can then go in and figure out, okay, where did your new patients come from? What's the right income areas? And then you can do targeting on top of this. Most people just spray and pray is what we call it in the marketing industry. That's where you draw a circle around the office and you hope it works. That's horrible. You should never, ever do that unless you just have an amazing area right around all around your office. You should be plotting out and seeing historically where your new patients are coming from. All right. So here's some ways to stay competitive. Be open when your competitors are closed. Be open when your competitors are close. And that doesn't mean you have to be doing dentistry, but answering the phones is a big competitive advantage. Same day appointment, same day treatment. If you can do that, patients love that. And if you can't do that, you say, I can't do that right now. I don't have the bandwidth for that. That's fine. Next day is huge. 2 days is huge. Even 3 days is huge right now in the dental industry. Most people cannot get into a dental office when they need like their teeth cleaned and those kind of things. Okay. Number next, call to actions. Call to action. So what is that? Being able to actually get the patient in your door. If they're high income and they have a need, you need to be able to compete on the way that they're coming into your practice. And I know so many dentists disagree with this, but guess what? Go look at a Pacific Dental website. Go look at an Aspen website. Go look at these other websites. They are going to have competitive call to actions, meaning examine x-rays or consultations or hygiene. If you price it too high, it doesn't weed out shoppers. It doesn't. All it does is scare people away with money. Okay. I make good money. My company's been on the Inc. 5000 list 3 years in a row. We do pretty good. I would never go to a dental office that's $200 for a cleaning, $150 for a cleaning. I just never would. In my area, there's hundreds of dentists, or at least scores of dentists, that are $59 to $99. And it's not because I'm cheap. It's because that's the perceived value in my area. So we can talk more about that later. Next, have good Google reviews. This is probably the biggest thing you can do. And this is why marketing agencies are dead. You need someone to help you map this out. All of this needs to be mapped out. It's not enough just to do it in segments or little pieces of it. You got to be able to map this out. So if you want help mapping it out, here's a QR code. You scan it and we'll do these maps for free. Normally you would go pay thousands of dollars for these maps. We'll do them for you for free. And then we'll tell you, this is what it's going to cost to compete in your market. And it might not make sense. And that's okay. You might have to figure out a different way to attract patients, or you might have to grow slower. But at least knowing, that's the big part of the battle. So, Dr. Nacho, how do we do?
That was amazing. That's so much value delivered in, what I like to call maybe your generation sitcom length sharing, family ties. Cheers. I'm dating myself, Modern Family. You learn so much in 22 minutes. A couple of things I want to, extract out of this dental pun intended. You talked about CTAs, kind of reinforce that. I think it is so important, but that's not something we learn about in dental school between mesial, distal, and the Krebs cycle. So if you're a private practice that really wants to bring in the right patients to compete with DSOs, reinforce that CTA concept.
Yeah. So really what it boils down to is if really the question you should be asking is, can they afford the treatment that you want to sell to them? That's really the question you should be asking, not if they want a $99 cleaning or not. And so here's where CTAs go really, really wrong. If you do a really cheap, free exam and x-ray or $59 cleaning to a low income area, yes, you're gonna hate it, and you're gonna hate your life because no one's gonna be able to afford treatment. But if you do a $99 cleaning when everybody else in your market is doing $150 cleanings and everybody has money to afford treatment in that area, you get first shot at every single patient calling you and saying, hey, I want to come in. And it doesn't mean they're cheap. And here's what dentists say. They're shoppers. Yes.
Yeah.
Every new patient is a shopper, just like every dentist is a shopper.
Yeah. Ask a dentist how many CBCTs they looked at before they pulled the trigger on it. So I think, I give a lot of lectures, and I say that the most 3 magic words for case acceptance is just like you. Hey, Janice was just like you. She didn't know if implants were worth it. She didn't know if she should spend the money. She was too old. Let me share a video. She was just like you. And the ways that bonds people together is you're just like your patients. When dentists say, I want them to value my crown, I go, what did you say to your supply rep about cotton rolls? You'd want them for 90% off. So, have some empathy, understand where people are coming from. Amazing share, Gary. I know you shared that QR code, but just in case people are listening to this a year from now or listening to this in the car, how could they reach out to you directly if they were listening?
Great question. So either on, I'm all over social media, the Gary Bird, and just spelt like it sounds, 8 letters with the in the front. And then, or go to our company website, smcnational.com. And either way, you can reach out to us. And I meet with my team every single day, look at every single account in my company. Like, I'm very, very heavily involved. And so we can quickly look at what's going on in your market, how much is it going to cost, and help it make sense. Like, if you just want marketing services, we're not the right fit for you. But if you want somebody to overlook your market, figure out competition, figure out incomes, figure out population, figure out future plans to open an office, adding an associate, adding a new treatment type, we can sit down and have that conversation with you and work through if it makes sense.
I think it's so important. Marketing is another part of your advisory team, one of the most important parts, because you want the right new patients at the right time. And I think too oftentimes dentists are not as intentional. And I know I've been this way, early in my career, just bringing more new patients, more class 2 patients. No, not those. So thanks, Gary, for supporting our community. Stick around with me. Everyone who's been watching and listening in, reach out to Gary and his amazing team. They're a fantastic key resource and sponsor. He brings a lot of fun